I've seen the comments. There is despair in the air. Some of you guys are actually quite devastated that Fallout 76's Battle Royale mode was killed off by Bethesda. Well, today I actually think I have one of the perfect alternatives for you, an alternate to some of the major BRs available. And I also think it'll actually be a big hit for Skyrim fans out there. I definitely see what kind of mods you guys are downloading, and this may interest you. Naraka Bladepoint is that answer. They were kind enough to sponsor this video, and it's going to be one of those Battle Royale games that's just not like the other girls. Because although Naraka Bladepoint does have the staples of those other Battle Royale games like Survival of the Fittest, you could play by yourself with a small group, you have to run through the map looting everything, and of course there's an ever-shrinking circle around you. It also has a ton of very unique and interesting features and mechanics that make this feel genuinely interesting. I'm one of those people, I just never got into the Battle Royale genre. I'm not the best shot, I don't have the best aim in most video games, so that's probably a big factor. I kind of suck at aiming. But with Naraka Bladepoint, that doesn't inherently matter. You're not just going to be camping somewhere waiting for that perfect headshot, as this is actually going to be a melee focused battle royale. There's still ranged options, but melee is the cornerstone. And coupling that with its incredibly interesting mobility system does create this really cool mix-up on the battle royale genre. It's on both Xbox and PC, and even included with Game Pass, or Naraka Bladepoint is 50% off this week. So one of the first big things you'll notice as you get into Naraka is it really has an emphasis on mobility and verticality, more so than the vast majority of other battle royales. It not only has a grappling hook, which I feel like basically every game with a grappling hook is just a bit more fun. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's fun to mess around with, whether it be with friends, enemies, etc. You could use this to jump to structures, jump onto enemies as you attack them, or even just cliff jumping, but also a full-scale climbing system. Think Assassin's Creed. It is everything you want from a climbing system. Whether it be climbing up, dropping down, climbing on, climbing around. You put this together with the grappling hook and you could do some pretty insane things when it comes to verticality or just general movement in this game. Some of those combat encounters become super interesting as a result of this. This grappling hook sound becomes fairly scary. You might be just standing somewhere doing some inventory management as you do in a battle royale. All of a sudden you hear the sound and an enemy pounces down on you and absolutely slaps you out of nowhere. But of course you can use this too, whether climbing around buildings, trying to sneak up on enemies, or using the grappling hook yourself in the middle of combat to dart around, whether you're running away or trying to get closer to your prey. The game just got a new map with Holoroth, and I feel like this really brings that mobility system together. It introduces some absolutely wild terrain. There are these floating structures that you can hop around on, and of course there's loot all throughout. You might occasionally get in a fight as you're hopping around and up this. There's going to be a full-fledged city here. It is very nicely designed, and of course the best loot are in some of these buildings, so it becomes a hotspot very quickly. And what is perhaps one of the funniest parts about this new map, there are traps scattered all throughout, and these traps are going to be something that tests your fate. Sometimes there's going to be some pretty good loot in or around one of these traps. And it's one of those things where you think you had the timing down. You're doing looting, you're doing it really quickly, but you have plenty of time until you quickly realize, oh no, I didn't have plenty of time and that trap just basically killed me. And some of the visuals you'll have as you're just running around, taking advantage of that verticality and getting in fights are pretty breathtaking. I would say all of the maps are pretty good looking, but this new one in particular is just great looking. And one of the pretty cool things is there's a few more interesting mechanics in this to mix things up. You could actually do shopping mid-game for better items or other loot. This not being a microtransaction, but you actually gain currency by taking out and looting other enemies, and you could buy things at these shops in the map, or even just doing quests in the middle. You could pick up bounties on other players halfway through the game, or even just salute a statue and he'll give you some great things. This new map is awesome and definitely has some pretty cool features like a full-fledged weather system, and things will get particularly wild towards the end of the game. But of course the cornerstone feature of Naraka Bladepoint is the combat system, and I think that's where this game really shines. Unlike many other battle royales out there, I think this combat actually has a lot of depth and a lot of different variables that get mixed in. First off, you'll be able to pick from a wide variety of heroes. All of these are going to have their own unique styles to them. Some of you Skyrim fans will definitely feel at home here. I see how you're modding your games. But of course, also, they're going to have a general ability that can be incredibly useful, as well as an ultimate ability that will oftentimes be very powerful. And this could really turn the tide in a fight. But of course, the ultimate is fairly rare to use. But also, you're going to be venturing around and looting items, and you'll be finding both ranged and melee weapons of different tiers. And there's a wide variety of each of these. And one of the pretty cool things about this game is playing either ranged or melee is quite viable. I oftentimes would open up with a ranged weapon, run around with my ranged weapon equipped, and try and take some potshots at an enemy or a group as I spotted them, but then quickly switch to melee as I had to reload, almost like a pirate, you run out of ammo and switch to your sword. But then there are other times where you're playing where one of your teammates just decides this is their time to shine. They run in and all of the enemies focus on them, and you can kind of just sit back and shoot enemies from afar, basically fully being a ranged player. Although oftentimes you'll be using at least a little bit of melee, and this has a ton of depth. You'll have a variety of different attack types. You can do power attacks to just button mashing, spamming attacks at enemies for different combos. If you get your timing right, you could counter enemies and actually disarm them in combat. There's things like dodging, and of course that entire mobility system I talked about earlier is completely usable in combat. You could use that grappling hook to jump around at enemies or jump from enemy to enemy. And it's one of those things where if you get good at predicting what an enemy's next move will be, you can absolutely dominate here. It's very skill based. But of course, alternatively, you could just be me sitting in the back shooting at enemies with a area of effect cannon so you damage everyone easily. And I think one of the pretty fun gameplay loops that this game brings out, where a lot of other games don't, is it actually has you changing up your build and playstyle pretty often. I had some games where I just sat back with a musket and was basically playing a ranged battle royale. I was basically never using melee. Or some other ones where I found a very powerful greatsword and instead I was just sitting front and center, getting into hand-to-hand combat with a giant sword trying to take out everyone. And all of these features come together to really be a nice departure from many of the other familiar battle royale gameplay loops that are already out there. I've used a lot of different ways to play this game, and each of them are pretty viable. You could be incredibly stealthy, waiting for that perfect moment to pounce. If you use something like an automatic crossbow, it almost just feels like a shooter because it feels like you're using a pretty familiar weapon from other shooters out there. Or of course, if you get really good at melee, you can do some great countering, disarming, and dominating in combat. And all throughout, you'll be mixing each of these mechanics together for something pretty special and pretty unique that I definitely haven't experienced thus far in a battle royale game. And of course, on top of all of that, you have unique heroes with unique abilities that change things up even further. Although Naraka Bladepoint is constantly getting updates. It actually just crossed its 1-year birthday. And if you want to take a break from that battle royale loop, it also does have a PvE showdown mode. This is completely different. You're going to have a completely different playstyle here, in that it almost becomes a cooperative fighting game where you're taking out bosses and relying a lot on that mobility, but also on cooperation with your teammates, actually trying to focus down bosses together and taking out other enemies all throughout. It's a pretty cool departure from the familiar battle royale, although of course the battle royale is the cornerstone here. So with that in mind, don't wait. You can click on that link in the description right now and you can actually try the game. You have Xbox Game Pass, you could also get it there, and if you like what you've heard, you could also get the game for a 50% discount until August 29th on all 3 platforms. But even something a bit extra special for many of you, if you reply to that pinned comment saying happy birthday to Naraka Bladepoint and say what aspect of this game you found the most interesting, you can win a $50 Amazon e-card. The prize is going to go to whichever comment gets the most likes in 3 days time, so try and be funny or try and be interesting, but also remember to wish Naraka a happy birthday. With that said though, hopefully you guys found this one informative, hopefully you found it interesting, and with that, I hope to see you all next time. Later.